John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast. Today, we are reading issue number 137. And just a little catch up before we get into that. John is on the trail of another magician who happened to date a woman that he once dated as well, and she is dead now. So he believes this magician did it. That guy's name is Joshua Wright, and he has recently found out who he is. And I guess to get Joshua out into the open, John went around and asked for him by name in order to get the guy to kind of come out of hiding and go after John, or at least make himself revealed. And what that did was it made Joshua Wright send some goons after John, and those guys beat the crap out of John. So we saw in the last issue John recovering from that beating, and basically like the whole issue was like almost silent because it was just John trying to get up, being all bloody, being hurt. But he was able to call Chaz to come get him from the street, and then he recovered inside of a hotel room. So once Chaz leaves and he's kind of recovered a little bit, John did this cool new move where we haven't really seen this before, but he kind of takes in all of London's evil, I guess, and gets kind of recharged from that. Like we got a bunch of scenes of violence happening. He was actually watching a scene of violence from his balcony as well. And John was saying he was like breathing it in like he was getting charged from it. And then the next thing we saw, he was projecting himself into Sparrowfart, the guy that told Joshua Wright that John was looking for him's apartment. And John was able to do some magic to scare him, like he exploded a light bulb right next to Sparrowfart's face. But then when Sparrowfart went to turn the light on, John was nowhere to be found. He was back in his hotel room. So he obviously just used some magic from his hotel room after recharging on all the evil in London. And that's pretty much where we left off on the last issue. So first things first, with issue 137, we got the cover. We see a silhouette of London in the background, and we see John standing next to a street light. And of course, he's looking out at us, and he's smoking like always. And we also see on this page that this is written by Warren Ellis with art by John Higgins. Oh, and I should mention, this was the run that started the Tim Bradstreet covers, including this one. And if you don't know Tim Bradstreet, he's actually the artist for a while on all these covers. And he did some of my favorite ones, but specifically the one that I used for the podcast logo is one of his as well. So this is like the start of him doing covers for Hellblazer. And I think he does them for something like 70 issues or something like that. He does a lot of them. And I'm a big fan, so I thought I'd mention it. And as we turn to the first page, we see that the name of this issue is Haunted Part 4. We get a shot from outside of John's hotel overlooking the park that he saw that man being robbed in the other night. And then we get a close-up of a woman who has OD'd on some sort of drug. So this is probably just adding to the evil in London that was charging John last night. Then we get 3 panels where we see that the day just goes by. So John sleeps the entire day away, recovering, I'm assuming. Then when it becomes night, he wakes up and he begins to get ready. And over that, his narration says, "I'm everything that never happened to you. I've seen people fucked to death and shat into hell for 8 quid and change. I've seen people with their bellies knife punched like tea bags and left with their guts steaming out on the pavement with the chip wrappers and dog shit just because they walked funny." Then we see a ready John Constantine walking out of the hotel and lighting a cigarette and turn and walk down the sidewalk. And his narration continues saying, "I've seen kids who tested positive for cocaine 10 seconds after they were born. Pale, wet things all broken inside like their mothers. I've seen hell blaze through these streets. I don't have the usual map of London in my head, not the one that everyone else has. London's got a different geography for me. Drawing blood and the last shit before dying. Mark it all out. Dark, wet borders. And I see no one giving a toss about it. No one at all." And as John says this last line, he walks by an alleyway and he kind of looks to his left, but he just keeps walking. And we see there is kind of like a face in shadow, and it's staring out at him. And on the ground next to it, we see a baby rattle and the baby rattle is covered in blood. Then we turn the page and we cut to Map, the man that John went to a couple issues back to find Joshua Wright in the first place. And he is walking through the subway tunnels as usual. And if you don't remember, he is some sort of supernatural guy who knows the entire map of London and can locate anyone inside of it for you. Or at least he did it for John. I'm not sure if that's something he does regularly for people. But as we see him enter a subway tunnel, we see two men jump down, and these men are familiar. They are the men who beat John up 2 issues back. And I guess they figured out that Map was the one who told John where Joshua Wright was. So they've come to shut him up, I guess. So they jump down into the subway tracks, and then they also follow Map. And just as they're getting into the tunnel, we see one of them flick out a switchblade. And we do see that Map hears that, but he doesn't turn around. He just keeps walking. And one of the men has a chain as well. And the one with the chain yells out, "Right then, you mouthy wog twat." And with that, Map does stop walking, but he doesn't turn around. So the man with the knife says, "You've been gobbing off to all the wrong faces, ain't you? None of you old twats should be fucking about with Josh Wright. Time for your spanking." And to that, Map just slowly begins to turn around and he says, "Dear, oh dear, is this what it's come to now? 2 boys whose balls have barely dropped, sent out to do a bastard's work, trying so much to sound hard. You think you frighten me when you say wog boys?" And I just want to interject something right here. Normally I don't say slurs, and actually I didn't even know that that was a slur. I think I might even said it in the comic before, thinking it was just a general mean word to call someone. But since Map, who is black, actually calls it out, and he goes on to say some words in the next section that I'm not going to say, but I felt like you had to say the first one they said in order to get the context for what's going to happen. So Map continues to turn around and call them out for trying to be tough guys and using racial slurs against him to do that. And so he says, "Let's have the list." And then Map proceeds to list off 4 other slurs, and he continues, "And all the rest. You think these words give you power over me. You think them old words and a good hard kicking give you power over anyone. Here's how the world is, boys. There are worse things than a kicking, and there are worse things than a wog." And as he says this last line, something is going on with his face. It seems like he's transforming. And he said all of that as he was like turning. So he was turning very slow. And finally, as he's facing them, we see his eyes have gone kind of pinkish and his mouth is open in an O. And it looks like he's kind of shrugging so that his head is kind of going into his shoulders. And there's a text bubble above him, but there's nothing in it. It's just a red bubble. And it's almost like he's saying something that can't be heard or isn't English. And it also looks like there's some light coming from behind him. And one of the attackers asks, "What's that noise?" Then we turn the page and we get a full page splash of what that noise is. And we see Map standing in front of a subway train that is coming down the tracks, literally 10 feet from these guys. So Map must have been like supernaturally blocking the sound out or something. And then now he is turned and he is revealed that they are about to be smashed by a train. And it's almost like when I said his body was contorting, like the lights of the train were coming out of his eyes and mouth, and the silhouette of his body, the way he was contorting it, kind of made a silhouette of what the train looks like from the front. And I'm not sure if this train is actually real, like it was scheduled and whatnot, or if this is something that Map has manifested, because it is all pink as well, and so maybe it is something that he's doing magically. But either way, it definitely hits those guys, because we cut to what's left of them after the train goes by. And all there is like literal body parts strewn all over the tracks. We see like the scalp of one of the guys, the hand, just the like face and mouth of one of them. It almost looks like these guys were like Mr. Potato Head or something, like you could literally take their mouth and nose off kind of thing. Then we see the body of Map manifest again, and he looks at all the carnage and he says, "Terrible mess." Then we turn the page and we cut to John walking and smoking. I think it's still the same night, but it's very foggy. And over him walking, we get some narration in the form of a journal entry from Isabel. And it says, "Josh and I went out to get a brand. Josh says tattoos are for weekenders, people who visit a lifestyle before going off to squat out 2.4 kids and sit in front of game shows for the next 50 years. Josh designed the brand himself. It's a word, Babylon. It's very important to him. It's the word, he says, that describes how he loves me. At least half of it is really just the fantasy that gets him off. But at least his fantasies are about sex, not like bloody Constantine. Josh has to hold me down. Everything suddenly smells of cooked pork. I see the faintest glistening trail of melted body fat run down the inside of my thigh, like the last trace of some quick, cruel fuck, surrounded by the stink of Burns wards. Then we get a panel of Isabel's ghost dancing with that bubble wand like in the first issue, and I guess it's just to show like how free and nice of a person she was. Then we see John turn down an alley, and right away there's someone that we've seen before sitting by a trash can holding a baby. And we've seen this guy before. It's one of the men that John talked to when he was trying to find Joshua Wright in issue 2 of this arc. And specifically, it was the one that was like smoking crack, and there was something about doing crack magic. And also in that issue, he mentioned like to John, hey, if you see my kid, tell him to come back to me. And then we saw John see the child, and it's like a toddler who can't speak and can barely walk. And he was kind of outside of this guy's room, fending for himself in the hallway. And that kid's dad's name is Darren. So he's here in this alley, and he looks up and he sees John, and he says, "Fucking hell, John, who stamped you?" And John answers, "I need your help, Darren. And before you giving me any old bollocks about how you're busy and too fucked up on crack, and you're waiting for your girlfriend to get back, at bleeding Cetra, you've got fuck all to do but look after that little baby, and you can't even fucking manage that. And now you've got no crack, otherwise you wouldn't be dossing alone. And your girlfriend's in Walthamstow, spreading her legs for the drug squad boys. And you owe me." And from there, we don't really see what happens from that. We just cut to a pub where John is hanging out. So we can kind of assume that John got what he wanted because he was so stern. And inside the pub, we see that John is not sitting alone. He's sitting next to an old man who is kind of dressed like John dresses, where he's got like a trench coat and a tie and a white shirt. But this guy is very, very, very old looking. And John is saying to him, "Funny I should bump into you, Hayne. I never see any old faces in our game anymore, aside from them at the tea rooms where Clarice goes." And Hayne says, "I have visions. It's the job, you see. This part of the job, this place where we work. We get under London's skin with all the blood and meat, and we get stuck there, do you see? It changes us." And then he looks over at John and smiles and says, "I'm what you've got to look forward to, son." And then John smiles and holds out a pack of cigarettes for Hayne to take one, and Hayne continues saying, "I was 10 years here when I started seeing things. Fuck me when I think about it. I'm coming up on 40 years in this town. Can you believe it? I was a nice-looking young man when I started. Everybody said so." And then he turns away from John as he's talking, almost like he's remembering all of this, and he says, "I used to love wandering down Wardour Street back then. All the strip shows and the prozzies. I had fresh quim for dinner every night for 2 years bar Christmas days. Took 2 years for the shine to come off me. That's all. 2 years to start looking like a magician. After that, I got the quim because they were afraid of me. Magicians know things, and it shows. And people are afraid to look at you because of it." And I should note that the word quim, in case you don't know, means like girls. Basically, he's saying, I got a lot of sex with either prostitutes who were prozzies, like he said before, or girls that thought he was handsome at first, but then they were just scared of him after his looks faded. And he continues to regretfully reminisce, saying, "But as luck would have it, some people will fuck anything. First ghost I had was the woman on Leighton Road. You know it?" But he doesn't wait for John to answer. He just continues saying, "I saw her. This was 5 years later. 5 years after she'd been kicked to death, aborting her baby right into the gutter. She kissed me." And as Hayne says this last part, we see John, who is paying attention to the story, but obviously this old man is just kind of reminiscing and talking to himself more than talking to John. So John looks up because he notices someone in the background kind of looking at him, and he sees Map standing there, and Map does not look too happy. So John just kind of gets up and walks away, and Hayne just continues to talk, saying, "I'm never quitting this job, never. My wife wanted me to. I remember our honeymoon. Paris in the autumn it was. Rain on pale gray concrete. The hotel staff treated us weirdly after the first 2 nights. We thought it was because we were being a bit loud in bed. We were in bed a lot those days." And this is all being said as John has walked away from the man and has approached Map. And Map says to John, "Two bad lads came to visit me in the underground tonight, John Constantine. I think maybe you had something to do with it. What have you pulled me into?" And we cut back to Old Man Hain, looking like he's about to cry as he's recounting this story about him and his wife's honeymoon, and he continues saying, "We were kind of right. My wife always shouted my name before she came. Hain means hate in French. All they could hear was her screaming and coming and screeching hate all bloody night." Then we cut back to John, who's replying to Map saying, "Well, you might have gathered by the state of me boat." And then John points to the wounds at his face and he continues saying, "I've run into a spot of bother, Map. They were sent by this Josh Wright, yeah?" And Map answers, "Yes, they were. I want to know why they were sent to me." Then we cut back to Hain, who's continuing saying, "She wanted to pack it all in, wanted me to leave London." Then we cut back to John and Map, and John is answering, "Because I told another of Wright's little bastards that you helped me locate him." And Map says, annoyed, "And you knew they'd come after me? And you knew I'd deal with them." And then John, ashamed, says, "Yeah, sorry about that, mate. Didn't have much choice." And then we see Map has disappeared, and then John walks back over to Hain, who's crying fully now and continuing his story about his wife wanting him to move to London, saying, "Now, why would anyone want to do a thing like that?" And then John puts a hand on his shoulder as if he was listening the whole time, and he says, "I can't imagine." Then we cut to the playground where the ghost of Isabel is still dancing, and we see a journal entry that just says, "London doesn't like me. I can feel it. Josh and I go out with his friends a lot. They're really interesting. I'm drinking a lot and taking a few more things than maybe I should, but I'm keeping it together. My own friends seem thin and gray to me. Two-dimensional people. Not quite real. They talk about gray things, TV, comedies, jewelry, thrush, flexi-time, lager-flavored condoms. I sit in fun pubs with them, sipping a regulation Bacardi and Coke as my disguise. I'm not like them. I finger the brand inside my thigh while they plan their dirty weekends in Blackpool. Josh and his friends know the score. I'm Babylon, a scarlet woman in a monochrome world." And in the background of these panels, we actually see in a couple of them, John is walking by the playground, kind of watching her dance, but John doesn't stop or say anything. He just has a very sour look on his face as he passes the playground. It's almost like he's using this to torture himself, possibly to continue the motivation. Then we turn the page and we cut to Sparrow Fart walking out of his house, and as he walks on the street, the narration says, "His brother's got no genitals. He came home one day to find his brother stuffed full of acid and literally tugging at his own scrotum, half severed by agency of the sticky hacksaw at his feet. There's a sound he still dreams, still wakes up in the dead of night, the sound of them slowly ripping off his brother's body." And as Sparrow Fart is about to cross the street, a car pulls up to him and rolls down the window and says, "Sparrow Fart." And I guess this was like a meeting that was planned because Sparrow Fart does not look surprised. He kneels down in front of the window and says, "Did you do him then? Teach old Map to fuck about with the likes of us?" And the person in the car replies, "Map spread both of my lads from Bank to Hackney like fucking Vaseline." And a very shocked Sparrow Fart says, "You what?" And the man in the car replies, "You heard. If I'd been thinking about it, I'd have sat on my hands too late now." And it seems like Sparrow Fart is confused because he says, "How do you mean?" And the man in the car answers, "Christ, Sparrow Fart, you don't half whine. I mean, Constantine fucked up your face and got you more scared of him than you are of me. I mean, he got you to tell me about Map. Got me good and pissed off, so I'd send two useful lads off to get wiped out. So now I'm two hard men short, and Constantine still knows where I live." And with that, the man talking, who we can assume is Joshua Wright, suddenly stabs out of the window with a knife. And he kind of does a slashing motion because he cuts off Sparrow Fart's nose. And Sparrowfart, of course, falls down backwards, screaming. And as he wriggles on the sidewalk, the car door opens, and Joshua Wright says, "You useless prick. Even now, you're probably doing what fucking Constantine wants you to do." And with that, Joshua Wright stabs into Sparrowfart's chest and then again into Sparrowfart's head, going all the way through, almost pinning him to the concrete. And with that, Sparrowfart dies. And that, my friends, is the end of the issue. So if you guys have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can email me at planestrains and comicbooks, all one word, at gmail.com. And we will see you on the next one.